Hello and welcome to the Comic Book Communicast, the official podcast of the Google Plus comic book community. This is issue number 8 for the week of October 23rd, 2013. I'm Justin Beeson, and I'm joined by co-hosts Sarah Evans.
Hey.
And Aaron Travis.
Hello.
Paul will definitely be back next week, I swear. This week he is not. However, each episode we take a look at a few comics from this week that we couldn't wait to read first, as well as talk about last week's Community Pick of the Week and other content from there that generated discussion. So let's get right into it. Sarah, what was your pick this week?
My pick, and I know that there's been some general excitement in the comic book Communicast forum about it, was issue 1 of Pretty Deadly, premiering this week by Kelly Sue DeConnick. And I've got to say, my socks were knocked off. It was very literarily engaging, visually beautiful comic. The art was amazing. For a comic where we don't actually see the title character until the end of it, which usually is a pet peeve of mine, it was really great because you get this astounding cast of characters that are all kind of doing their own thing. They all have very interesting stories that are going on with themselves, and you can just tell throughout the entire issue that they're all about to collide, and there's going to be a huge fallout, and very excited for what it means for this series. You get lots of very engaging female characters, some interesting, I'm not quite sure how to describe him actually, Fox, the character Fox. He's not necessarily, there's a character, he's not given it away whether he's more of a mentor figure or whether he's an aged hero. He definitely seems to have mystical attachments going on, and his name, being a Western, if he were meant to have some affiliation with some sort of supernatural force or trickster god, he might have been more aptly named Coyote, but I'm not exactly sure if that's the intention. However, his name, Fox, certainly seems to imply that he's got a few tricks up his sleeve. So this is an older character. He's obviously been around the block a few times, and very excited to see what this kind of supernatural John Wayne figure does throughout the remainder of the series. And you definitely want to read the comic all the way through because it's got great, oh my gosh, the story extends beyond the main plot. You get a very moving memoir from Kelly Sue DeConnick, sort of a mini autobiography in segments about her journey towards starting Pretty Deadly, and the entire concept of the comic and how she met the artist. And on the very back page, you get a huge spoiler for what is actually going on with a stolen item that has changed hands throughout the plot. So
Yeah, that last page was pretty cool because it was kind of like a cool little mini story.
Right, it was amazing. It was very, I'm not his biggest fan, but it was very Gaiman-esque in kind of a, I don't want to misquote this, but it's kind of a Sandman sort of style where you get very interstitial with the storytelling, and you've got kind of spliced in narrative and traditional portrayal as a comic book.
Yeah, definitely. I really like this issue too. I got a chance to read it. The amount of world building that she does, or that both of them do in the issue, is great. You know, real quick, and you feel like you already know a lot of what's going on here. And I think the art had a lot to do with that too. I know it's very like, the art's kind of, it's very traditional, but it's not. All the cells and everything are pretty traditional, like square panels for the most part, and there's a lot of them, but they vary in size. But there was one part that was really cool where, I think it was when Fox, they roll into town and they're telling the townspeople about the fable, and he's kind of pointing to the poster with a stick, like a walking stick, and then the walking stick at different points also divides the cells. I thought that was really cool.
I did not actually catch that. That is so interesting. Gonna have to reread now.
Yeah, they're like, they show him pointing to two different things, and then they're crooked kind of like this, but then it's the cell division as well. and I thought it worked really well.
Okay.
And that cover is probably one of my favorites in recent memory.
It's beautiful. Gotta love the wraparound.
Yeah, yeah, it's really it's because it looks real pretty at first, and then you see the disembodied hands.
Right. No, well, definitely the word deadly kind of takes over the title, so you get the feeling that this is not going to be a happy little romp through the Wild West. But like you said, the art was just an astounding tool that they used in the storytelling. The coloring in particular, just the heavy use of browns when they want to. I mean, brown and Sierra and taupe and whatever whatever synonyms you want to use when you're telling an Old West story. Maybe a little cliche, but at the same
Sepia.
time, like yeah, like you said, it really sells you on the story in the first scene, what's going on, where you are, and they definitely use a lot of color in this book to help tell the overall story. Very bright colors at times, entire scenes where there may be a dark blue overcast if it's very serious, or I don't know, a yellow overcast kind of faded. The backstory that you mentioned at the very beginning, we get one very clear backstory about the main character that we see a glimpse of at the end, her origin story, as it were, which you can. It's Jenny's backstory, Death's daughter. You can learn as much in reading the solicit, but it's very beautiful. It's wonderfully drawn. It's about as angsty as you can anticipate from Death's daughter having an origin story, and while at the same time not being overpowering or I don't know, emo at all. It's just very well told, and it kind of, I don't know about y'all, but it made me very eager to see what's going on with everyone else and their backstories and the different characters, how they came to be where they are right now, because I have very high hopes for the world building at this point.
Yeah, definitely. This was a comic that got a lot of hype, and it actually ended up living up to it. Even if more so, if even. So that was pretty deadly. Aaron, what was your pick this week?
Well, my pick was Justice League Dark 24. I've wanted to get into this for a bit, but this was a perfect time because they're starting their part of the Forever Evil event. This is the first issue in the Forever Evil Blight story arc. It was written by Jay DeMatteis and Michael Janin, who, I mean, other than the Justice League Dark stuff, I've no clue who they are. But I think that's basically all the artist has ever done too. I don't know. It's I don't know. I guess this is supposed to be a pretty big deal. The DC, Bob Harris, the chief editor in chief of DC, basically said that the character, the Blight that they're bringing out in this is it's going to have this. He's going to have a huge overarching effect on everything. Major shakeups. It's going to be. This event is going to be in the Justice League Dark, Trinity of Sin, Phantom Stranger, and Pandora, and Constantine. So it's kind of a big deal, supposedly. I read this just before watching The Conjuring for the first time tonight, so my takeaway on both of the things might be tainted on each other. But basically, it starts off with Constantine being the only one left, and being the only person left with this room full of little teeny Constantine demons, which was a great way to start for me because I am a huge Evil Dead fan, and it was totally Army of Darkness. That was really cool. Little ashes everywhere, so that gets the big thumbs up. It had some really cool panel layout, like you were talking about previously. Like in the beginning, they had this part where he was moving around a room, and they basically showed the room, and they had little boxes with him in various parts of the room to show time passage within that one space. It was pretty cool. I thought that was pretty neat. The story was basically just a quick and dirty and trite explanation of the whole Pandora's box thing and how it brought about evil thoughts and how they created this character, the Blight, and primed the world for the crime syndicate and all this stuff. And they also reintroduced a character that was in the Phantom Stranger earlier on when the Question tried to kill him, the Nightmare Nurse. And she seems like she could be pretty interesting. I didn't read the 2 issues of the Phantom Stranger that she was in, but she seems like she could be interesting. This is just basically an introduction, a recap of everything that had happened previously, and an introduction of kind of what's to come. So it's kind of a, there wasn't really as much going on in this one. Like I said, it's 18 issues over 4 titles, and it's running through March. So, it's not gonna be that heavy, but it'll be pretty cool. I'm really interested to see how this is gonna affect or fit into the whole Forever Evil plotline. I'm probably not gonna read much of the Forever Evil stuff, so it'll be interesting to read those and see what you guys have to say about everything else and how it fits in. And also, it's the titles that it affects are titles that I've really wanted to read for a while. On the downside, I think it might end up having this weird love conquers all overarching plot line, which I really hate. Never get into a conversation with me about the Fifth Element. And also, if you've seen the images of the character, of the actual Blight that have been going around, looks pretty dumb. It looks like a character class out of like some late '90s Final Fantasy game. Like Final Fantasy Tactics. It looks exactly like that. It looks like a darker version of what were they, the Dragon Knights from Final Fantasy. It's kind of stupid. But whatever. I'll still follow it because it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be cool to see how these characters fit within the Forever Evil plotline. Plus, it seems like they found a way to fit them into the DC universe in a really interesting way. So it'll be interesting as a development point. It'll be a really interesting series. It'll be worth watching, and I will probably end up following it all the way through.
I'll probably have to rely on you for that because I'm getting a little DC crossover fatigue, so I didn't plan on following this. And plus, Jeff Lemire dropped off, which was one of the main reasons I was reading Justice League Dark before. But yeah. I mean, this issue was decent. I'll probably read the next one just to see how it goes because, like you said, this was a recap, and it actually was a pretty good introduction to everything. Because I've read pretty much all of it coming up to this, so it was a good placeholder. I mean, and it made me interested in what was to come. So yeah, could be cool. All right. So my pick this week was Samurai Jack #1. Ever since they announced this, I've been looking forward to this a lot because I actually only recently came into Samurai Jack, but loved it and was really mad at myself for not watching it when it came out. And then they announced that it's Jim Zub who does Skull Kickers, which is it's just like a fun book, and his style fits perfectly for this. And the artist, Andy Suriano, he actually did the original character designs for the show, so it's a perfect fit. You open this book up, and it's like you're watching another episode of the TV series. Obviously the art is the same. The colors are very vibrant. They're psychedelic at times. They use a lot of high contrast and silhouettes and shadows and stuff. And it's perfect. And basically, it just kind of picks up where the cartoon is. Samurai Jack he's fighting this big wizard, I guess warlock, called Aku, who sent him into a post-apocalyptic future, and so he's trying to get back home. He meets with a holy person that gives him another hint on how to do that, so he starts off on another quest. And this issue is just it's almost non-stop action, but it's done really well. And the dialogue, when there is dialogue, it's spot on for how the show was. So I'll definitely be be following this, and I mean, as long as it's going.
So one of the other things that really interested me in the show was not just the visual style, but the pacing and the choreography of the action. It was I'm a huge samurai film buff. I love feudal Japanese film, and they got the pacing and just the way that they treated action down in the cartoon. I'm really curious to see how that translates into the book.
I mean, I can't speak to that as much because I'm not a samurai buff or anything, but the fight scenes definitely felt like they were right from the cartoon. His moves, using like things in the environment to fight for him, and it's really cool. I mean, definitely check it out if you were a fan of the show and that stuff. It's worth reading. All right. So Sarah, did you have any other significant books that you got this week?
Well, Rat Queens #2 came out, and it continues to be pretty entertaining. I love the dynamic and the art that portrays these 4 female characters and even more side characters we see starting this issue with really different body types, which you don't see a lot in comics. And, of course, it's pretty easy to do when you've got your generic tabletop gaming-esque adventure party of a human, a dwarf, an elf, a halfling. It's pretty easy to draw them with different body types, but it seems like they put a little extra effort into thinking what these characters actually look like. And as we left off last issue, I don't know, it picks up pretty immediately from there. It looks like it's going to be a really good ongoing. And Young Avengers continue to escalate with Hulkling filling the role of dude in distress. And Loki got a new transformation. Kid Loki evolved into his next form. So definitely be pulling that if you're a Loki fan.
Cool. What about you, Aaron? Did you pull anything else this week?
I geeked out on a lot of back issues of, like, I found War of the Woods, and I geeked out on that. And I've been reading a lot of back issues, and like somebody lent me the trade for JLA's Golden Age, and that was probably one of the best things I've ever read. So yeah, nothing cool. Necessarily new, but I put that on the back issue list, by the way.
Nice. Yeah, well, I mean, in addition to Pretty Deadly, which I kind of joined in that conversation, I'm looking forward to reading Velvet #1, which is the new creator-owned from Ed Brubaker, and I forgot who the artist is, but it's the artist who was on his Captain America run. And it's another like crime style book, but that's getting a lot of early buzz and should be good. And I guess that was. I mean, I pulled a bunch of other stuff, but that was the main one. So that's it for this week's comics. Our community pick of the week last week, another Marvel book, was Superior Spider-Man #19. It's basically, this was wrapping up an arc that had Spider-Man 2099 return to the Marvel Universe. Basically, he came back in time to stop the big bad from his era from dying, because it's actually like his father or grandfather or something like that. And then, of course, clashes with Superior Spider-Man, who doesn't know who he is because he's gotten rid of Peter Parker's memories. That's kind of, that whole thing is kind of takes a back seat to what Dr. Octopus as Spider-Man is doing with him. This was kind of the last nail in the coffin for the things that he's changed in Peter's life. He's finally cut all ties with Mary Jane, and Horizon Labs, which is the job that Peter had for a while, in the process of this book, is gone now. So now it's kind of like a stepping stone to the next thing. This book it's good. It's not great. This was, to me, this was really interesting when it first started out, but it just seems like now I'm getting a little worn out of Spider-Man or Dr. Octopus as Spider-Man just kind of being a jerk to everybody, and it's losing interest. But we did have our first inkling of Peter Parker coming back You'll have to look in the issue for that. It's a couple panels that if you blink, you'll miss it, but it's there. But if you really want, if you want the same character as Superior Spider-Man, I actually have been liking Avenging Spider-Man, Superior Spider-Man team-up a little more, mostly because you get to see him, interact with actual other heroes in the universe, and I think that's been a little bit more interesting. So that was the pick of the week. Hopefully next week it'll be a book that we can all join in on. So this week's discussion topic, I'm taking another one from our community by Joseph Sokolowski, who does the CBC Just for Fun topics every day that seem to generate a lot of discussion. The one that I liked for this week is he asked for people to name a current comic that you would like to see as a TV show, and then also a TV show that should be a comic. So, Aaron, what did you think about that question? I know you answered it in the community too, but
yeah, I did. I have to say I really am enjoying these daily questions too. They're really fun. But I chose for the comic that I think should be a TV show, I chose Baltimore. If Baltimore got not the Walking Dead treatment, but if it got a really proper moody treatment like on HBO or Showtime or something, that could be the next Game of Thrones. I mean, it's got that much depth, that much character development, and there's a lot of them. So I think that would be good for that. And as far as a TV show, considering you did not say current TV show, that should be a comic, I would absolutely love to see Freaks and Geeks done Fantagraphics style. That would be just amazing because A, I want more Freaks and Geeks, and B, I want more Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned that before the show, I hadn't even thought about that type of show being a comic, and I think you're absolutely right. That would make an awesome comic.
I think somewhere at that time I was having a conversation with somebody about something, and it made me pull up the YouTube video of Bill Habachuk while he's sitting there watching the match game, eating his grilled cheese sandwich. And that was the first thing that came in my mind.
Nice. Sarah, what about you?
Well, I was actually surprised to see a commenter on this board mention one of my favorite series, The Authority. I think it's fantastic. I love that the characters are some of the most God-moded superheroes you will ever come across, at least in the pre-DC Purchase of Wildstorm run. And simultaneously, while the Midnighter's going around ripping people's heads off and their spines and doing horrible things to them with their own weapons, he comes home and watches cartoons with his baby girl later. And I think that would make a really entertaining TV show. Since they're up on the carrier orbiting Earth between dimensions most of the time, possibly something animated, similar to the Justice League Unlimited, where they were basically based off of the Watchtower, only with the Authority, obviously, it would have to be more of a cartoon for adults. And as far as your average live-action sitcom drama goes, X Factor Investigations in the incarnation of that team. I know there's been a lot of X Factors over the years, but Peter David's run, I've always thought would make an amazing comic. It's set in New York City. He does amazing things with these characters. It's just a wonderful cast. Their personalities, you've got Richter and Strong Guy and Jamie Madrox, who's running this team that has no idea how to make decisions to save his life. And you put any 3 or 4 of these characters in a room at any given time, and you've got just a dynamite scene. And I think that would translate really well into TV, especially since this is one of the few super teams you have where they're in civvies as often as they're in tights, and you've got romantic drama and bickering over who's doing the laundry and who's removing the corpse from the kitchen floor in between super battles. So.
And what about, did you think about a TV show that could become a comic?
I have, but since I mostly trend towards sci-fi and fantasy TV shows, just my own preference, there's been a lot of what I watch, like Firefly and Supernatural, that have kind of wandered over into their own spin-off comics. The one TV show that I've started watching just in the last year, Once Upon a Time, it has actually had its own comic run through Marvel, which is also tied to Disney, like ABC, which puts out Once Upon a Time. So I had pretty high expectations for this book, and it turned out to be a huge disappointment in that the art was nowhere near what I expected from such a beautifully shot and crafted and costumed and visually amazing show. The art was just really sketchy and kind of disappointing, and it had an overall theme of implied lack of consent and the evil queen essentially raping the huntsman, and the writers trying to make that okay, because it's been out for about a month now, so I'll say at the end he gives her the power over him that she had originally taken in order to save some other characters' lives, and the last scene is of them lounging in her boudoir, and he's in a very sexy leather getup, and I'm still like, it's coercion. This is really gross. So I just did not like the way they handled that at all. Nope.
All right. Well, the comic that I most want to see in a TV show, and it's almost happened multiple times, is Preacher. And I mean, I think right now it's in its current carnation. They're trying to do it a movie, but there was a while where they were working on it as an HBO show, and it would just be awesome. I love that comic book. That's one of the first like multiple volume comics that I went all the way through, and I would love to see that as a show. The other one that it seems like a no-brainer to me is I think that Marvel should convert Daredevil to a TV show, because you could have the superhero part of it and then have Matt Murdock law offices and do, you have action and then you have half procedural, because people love procedural dramas. I think it would fit right in. For a TV show that could be a comic, I think I would most want to see like a Person of Interest spinoff. I love that show. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Basically, they have this machine that gives them a social security number, and that number is for a person that is either about to die or is about to kill somebody. And so they go and try and intervene and either save them or put them away. And they've introduced, over the last basically season and a half, they've introduced a couple supporting characters that I think you could totally spin them off into a comic and not have the main people in the comic. You could just spin it off with the supporting characters, specifically Shaw and Root. Either one of them could support their own series. The other one is a show that was on Fox, and since Fox loves to cancel shows, it's gone now, which was Terra Nova. I don't know if you guys watched that one. It was kind of like...
I saw that a couple times, yeah.
I really liked it. It kind of... It had its ups and downs quality-wise, but the premise was awesome. It's kind of like Land of the Lost on steroids. These people from the future have... like their resources are gone, so they send people into the far past to try and create, a new life, and all the complications that go along with that. And I think that would be awesome for a comic book, especially since it's not on the air anymore.
That would be pretty cool.
It does sound great. And as for your Daredevil idea, there's a lot of superheroes in the Marvel Universe with law degrees that you could kind of work in cameos. I mean, She-Hulk.
Yeah, She-Hulk.
Dazzler was pre-law.
Now I'm just seeing this as working out kind of like Harvey Birdman, attorney at law. I mean, honestly, that's how I'm seeing that work out. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you took the tone of Mark Waid's current run, it probably would be.
That would just be hilarious.
But I mean, I don't like that. That one just seemed like a no-brainer to me, because everybody, procedural dramas seem to, procedural and like the CSI type things are huge right now, and that could be all of that in one with a superhero tie-in. But yeah, so I'm sure it'll happen eventually, unless they go back to the movies, which, who knows.
That would be horrible. That would be horrible.
So that about does it for this week. The Communicast home on the web is #Communicast on Google+, and cbcpodcast.tumblr.com, where you can find all of our episodes in audio or video, as well as links for subscriptions, downloads, and anything else we mentioned on the show. We'd also greatly appreciate if you're watching or listening, if you share our show out on Google+, or those other social networks, as well as we're on iTunes, so if you rate it on iTunes and subscribe on there, it also helps to get the name out there. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week. And Paul has promised that he will be back. He'll be back in the States, so he will be recording with us. So all right, have a good night.
Good night.
No.